Welcome to another edition of Global Conversations. My guest today is my friend and frequent guest on the show, Vladimir Kozin, who lives in Moscow. Not only is he a Russian, but he's an expert, and I want to get his analysis on the Ukraine crisis. Vladimir, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much, Regis.
So, Vladimir, yesterday, I believe, the United States reportedly finally gave their written response to Russia's mutual security agreement, but they asked the Russian government not to release it to the public. I found that very curious, not surprising, and to which Sergei Lavrov replied, "We will communicate the essence of their responses to the Russian people." Now, Vladimir, what do you think of that response? And have you heard any comments, official or unofficial, about how Russia reacted to this?
Yes, Regis. Yesterday's evening, around 9 p.m. Moscow time, the current U.S. ambassador to Moscow, to Russia, Mr. Sullivan, delivered to the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs a written reply from the United States concerning Moscow's proposals on security guarantees. I was also heard that NATO response to Russian proposals have been given to Russian ambassador in Brussels. So we have got two replies, two replies from both sides. I mean, the United States of America and the NATO alliance. Official reaction to this two letters or two responses have not been articulated here in Moscow when we are talking to you. It's 11 hours, 5 minutes a.m. Moscow time. So by that time, January 27th, there have not been any official response to these two documents. When Deputy Foreign Minister of the Russian Federation, Mr. Alexander Grushko, got the US response at the Russian Foreign Ministry yesterday, and he was asked by newsmen, "When are you going to respond?" He jokingly replied that we have been waiting for American and NATO reply for more than 1 month and a half, meaning that we officially delivered our requests exactly to both sides, the US and NATO separately, on December 15th last year. You have asked me about the essence of the reply, and probably you will ask me, are we satisfied with the answer? My personal view is, I have not seen the reply. And I'm also very curious and very much surprised that Washington and NATO headquarters in Brussels outlined no possibility to reveal the reply from these two corners of the world. There is nothing to hide to the world community. There is nothing to hide to the Russian people. There is nothing to hide to other non-NATO member countries, be they in the East or in the West. It's an open secret. Security. It touches upon any citizen all over the world. Yes, we will familiarize the Russian Federation people, our citizens, and the citizens of political alliances we are having with a number of countries, especially with the Organization on Collective Security Treaty, having 6 countries inside this organization and some other like Shanghai Cooperation Organization, etc. And but seemingly the response is not very fair. The famous Russian Liberal Democratic Party leader, Mr. Zhirinovsky, was asked, Vladimir Wolfovich, a correspondent was asking him, what's your assessment of this reply from the US/NATO side? And he replied, I will give 3 in a maximum 5-point scale. In the Russian system, we just 5 is the highest remark at school and the universities and institutes. So he put 3. I also put 3, though I stress again that I have not seen the document in full by 100%. But from various linkages and from commentary or press briefings made by 2 gentlemen, Mr. Antony Blinken and Jens Stoltenberg, yes, I can figure it out that the answer is not satisfactory to us, because the doors to NATO for any country are still open, first. Second, the United States of America and NATO are still continuing amassing troops, advisors, consultants, and more than that, lethal, heavy weaponry to Ukraine, and some other NATO countries are doing the same in full swing and in full dimension. That's a negative reply to our request. Third, we have not been given any hint so far from 2 press conferences by Mr. Blinken and by Mr. Stoltenberg that the United States of America would pull back all its nuclear forces from Europe and from Asian part of Turkey. We have not got any hint, any signal from these 2 noble gentlemen that missile defense systems, first one is already operational in Romania, and the second one to be commenced very soon in Poland. We haven't heard anything that they would be scrapped, dismantled, and taken back to the continental USA. We haven't heard. We have not heard any glimpse of hope that the US heavy strategic nuclear capable bombers like B-52, B-2, B-1A, etc., would not fly very close to the Russian territory from the United States, from European military airfields, etc. We have not heard any desire to cancel Air Force operation of NATO called Baltic Air Policing. More than that, the same day when the response from Washington and from NATO headquarters in Brussels have been delivered to us, to the Russian side, we have witnessed the increase of aircraft numbers to be added to this Baltic Air Policing operation. totally 4 plus 2 plus 6, so 12, around a dozen of newly built contemporary US aircraft, dual capable aircraft, meaning that they can deliver both conventional and nuclear weapons. What kind of guarantees all these steps are? Nothing of the kind. So, to summarize my response to your direct questions and sub-questions, concentration of NATO military hardware, assault and offensive capabilities are still going on. In relation to Russia and to the Republic of Belarus, our ally. Second, the danger of war against Donbass is increasing 1 hour after 1 hour. When we are talking the pouring of hardware military equipment, lethal arms, ammunitions, lubricants, anti-tank weapons, Bayraktars, air-based drones built by Turkey. All this stuff is going to Ukraine. And another angle, it's Donbass. Unfortunately, the Kiev regular armed forces are still concentrated in the close proximity to Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics. There was a couple of days, 112,000. Lately, it became 125,000 troops. Today, we are having 129,000 troops of regular Ukrainian armed forces. In this figure, we do not include, so to say, military formations of the territorial defense, a kind of military formations made of volunteers. We call them private military companies, private military formations. They are not counted into this 129,000 men. It's also a tremendous community, and people are afraid that, for example, if the regular armed forces of Ukraine will definitely obey when they get direct order from the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and subsequently from the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, without this order, they will not open fire because this is army. Hopefully, this army is well disciplined and obey orders from supreme commanders. But this kind of military formations made of volunteers or private armed companies, they are obeying to nobody, only to their local commanders. And that's very bad because they can turn flicker into a flame. They can start provocation against Donbass. So I think that I will stop here and listen to your other questions, Regis.
Well, I want to add to what you just said, and I want to emphasize a couple of points that are very important. Number one, there are no official statements coming from either the United States Secretary of State Blinken or the Undersecretary of State Wendy Sherman, nor from NATO that differ in what they've been saying all along. Russia is the aggressor. Russia is the aggressor because it has troops marshaled along its own border. You just mentioned the exponential increase of Ukrainian formal army troops are now up to 129,000 along the entire border between Russia and Ukraine. This by itself is an aggressive action in the eyes of anybody who hasn't been drinking the American Kool-Aid.
Correct.
Now, I just heard from a very good friend who just returned from Ukraine after a week of visiting with his family. He told me that they are now drafting women up to the age of 60 in the military. Have you heard anything like this yourself?
Yes, I've heard the same story about drafting women. And not only them, also school children of the last grades, 9th, 10th grade. So quite grown-ups. They also are distributing weaponry, rifles, pistols, called sidearms, to any person who would like to carry them and to use them. Sorry. And Ukrainian army instructors are giving lessons to these civilian people who would like to carry sidearms and to use them. They also supply cartridges, etc., bullets. Another problem is that the Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republic's leaders, current leaders, they openly declared the day before yesterday and yesterday that the composition of the Ukrainian armed forces in adjacent areas towards Donbass clearly shows that is not units and formations or just divisions or companies for defensive purposes, because Donetsk is not going to conquer Kiev or the rest of Ukraine. They do not have such capabilities at all, completely. They're happy what they have got on their territory in these two republics. Second, all composition like pouring lubricants, petrol, gasoline, etc., a lot of ammunitions, tanks, armored personnel carriers, heavy howitzers, heavy mortars, drones, aviation, etc., clearly shows that these formations can be characterized as offensive formations, created and stuffed specifically to attack certain territory. That's Donbass. And I don't remember whether we have debated this issue in the previous interview, but I would like simply to reiterate if I said that selling or just giving a lot of military ammunition and arms to Kiev from various NATO countries, it's a violation of the 1993 OSCE, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, decision prohibiting to send, to sell, to give voluntarily on a grant and aid basis any type of lethal arms into the zones where we are witnessing conflict situations. The story with Donbass is just exactly the case. Why
Vladimir,
the OSCE is silent? Why we're still, when we started negotiations first on the 10th of January with the United States in Geneva, then in Brussels on the 12th of January in Brussels with NATO at the NATO-Russia Council, and subsequently on the 13th of January in Vienna at Hofburg Palace, at the headquarters of OSCE. Why the OSCE is there is a dead silence of this horrible story of selling arms to incredible, failed, pro-nationalist, ultra-fascist regime entrenched in Kiev.
I'm glad.
Yes, please go ahead.
No. I'm glad you just mentioned that. The ultra-fascist neo-Nazi regime in Kiev. I also wanted to add that it has been widely publicized, and I have photographs of the neo-Nazi battalions, such as Azov Battalion,
Right.
photographs of them riding their tanks with Nazi symbols, the swastika.
Yes.
They have tattoos on themselves. They have patches on their uniforms showing all of these Nazi symbols. And people need to understand, people in America, people in Europe need to understand the influence that these far right-wing neo-Nazis have on what is going on in this conflict. So I'm very happy you mentioned that. You know, I heard from friends the other night. I have a monthly meeting of my classmates from college and from postgraduate. And there's about 17 of us that meet. And the first thing they asked me when we started the Zoom meeting was, is there going to be war in the Ukraine? And when I said to them, well, what do you mean? What have you heard? And they said, well, it's on the television here 24/7. It's all the news is about the Russian aggression. Russians going to invade Ukraine. Now, the other night, Vladimir, I was having dinner with a Russian family that I am close to. The first thing they asked me when we sat down at table was, will America start a war with Russia? And I asked them, well, what have you heard? And they said, well, we watch TV all day long. And it's been all over Russian television and Russian news here in Russia that there's going to be war. Two things, Vladimir. Is that a fact that the Russian state media and other media have been reporting this every day, as is happening in America? And number two, are Russians afraid that there may be war? My friends were very concerned. Vladimir.
Well, there are several angles in the questions and in your curiosity you have already displayed. First of all, Russia is not going to attack Ukraine. What for? We have plenty of land, plenty of territory. Yes, everything we have at our disposal, that's our assets. We're not going to attack Ukraine as a country. There is no need, and there is no concentration of Russian armed forces for this particular aim, for this particular goal. Second, will Ukraine wish to attack the Russian Federation or the Republic of Belarus? Probably yes, in one case. And I will tell you in what way and why. Ukraine is going to attack initially Donbass and to regain it at any cost, killing all civilians, By the way, the UN data is that 13,000 civilians have been killed by Ukrainian armed forces, and this Azov type far right-wing formations, armed formations. So if Ukraine attacks us before Donbass, we will respond, no doubt, by all means. And we will respond if Ukraine physically attacks Donbass, not by shelling by a single mortar or just sail or just fire or making tank fire, etc., or by American assault rifles, but attack physically in order to destroy completely and wipe out of this land completely. We will definitely intervene. We will help Donbass, Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republic to stop this aggression and to punish the aggressor. By the way, yesterday, we have a ruling party called United Russia, Единая Россия. The leader of that party openly, via TV, via mass media resources, applied to President Vladimir Putin with a request, with a plea to supply Donbass, Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics with a selected types of arms to defend from this aggression that is inevitable. Day in, day out, the thrust, the power of offensive forces of Ukraine is increasing, And there is a semi-civilian, semi-military airport near Kiev called Borispol. It has already received several dozens of transportation of cargo military plane from the United States, from the United Kingdom, from Baltic republics, from the Czech republics, etc., with the military equipment and ammunition, etc., shells, grenade launches. So we will respond. We have to, because too many people in Donbass are ethnic Russians. They're really our sisters and brothers. We will definitely do that. So to avoid this kind of scenario, Ukraine should stop movement or stop accumulation of its armed forces near Donbass and stop threatening Donbass by military might, by just a huge military might. So look, Ukrainian hospitals have been, I mean, all normal clients, non-normal sick persons have been removed to minor hospitals, but these free hospitals became military hospitals because the Kiev regime calculates that, well, there will be a lot of casualties, killed and wounded personnel if the war erupts. So as to our mass media, as to the Russian-speaking TV channels, they are openly inform the audience what kind of weapons is delivered to Ukraine from NATO and from the United States, what kind of equipment is giving, how many money have been already spent for military hardware. And I have heard and I have seen It's figures announced by Washington from 2014, when the military takeover took place in Ukraine, neo-Nazi. Only the United States government has spent 2.7 billion US dollars as a military aid to Ukraine. Currently, Congress sanctioned $650 million to that figure. And recently, President Joseph Biden donated anti-tank systems, Javelin type, at the price of $200 million US dollars. So a huge amount of money, not preparing for maneuvers, but for attacks. And Donetsk and Lugansk People Republic leaders also openly appear at the Russian TV channels, and they said that their intelligence community and their friends in the continental Ukraine, inform them that the concentration still continues. So there is no security guarantees. What the United States and NATO and Ukraine are doing, simply to create here a constant fire, a constant fireball, a conflict situation, in order to intimidate us, in order to intimidate Belarus, yes, to create Ukraine as, if not a full-fledged member, but nevertheless as a privileged partner of the NATO alliance, with the same obligations, with the same rights as a normal NATO member states. So the situation is still very difficult, dramatic. It is not diffused, it's increased. And the escalation of this situation is in the hands of Joseph Biden, exactly, NATO alliance, and Kiev failed regime. Regis?
Okay, Vladimir, I would like to follow up with a few questions. Did I hear you intimate that war, an attack, is inevitable? Yes.
It is.
It is. So
it is inevitable, and initiator will be Kiev and Washington, and Brussels as a headquarters of NATO alliance.
So do the Russian people believe that war is imminent? Are they afraid?
We are not afraid, simply because we have much stronger military might than the United States of America. We have 7 types of high-tech military arms and weapons. Some of them already are in the armed services of the Russian Federation. Some of them will be commissioned very soon, will be very active. So we have a kind of military capability that the United States of America still doesn't have. I mean, hypersonic weapons with a pinpoint accuracy, both convention and nuclear tipped. So that's why we are just quite happy with this equilibrium, with this balance in favor of us in terms of military might, and the vicinity of Russia in terms of Europe and Ukraine. our people are calm and quiet, though we are listening and watching TV stations every hour, every day, every evening. We also just trying to, especially experts, to see what the West is talking about, and we are not happy that President Joseph Biden just increased the loudness of his voice, full of militarism and punishment. You know that the Russian Federation has recently declared the United States of America and the Czech Republic as недружественное государство, as unfriendly state. But what we are just witnessing now, the US and all NATO member countries, except some small countries like Iceland and Luxembourg, practically do not have any armed forces. So we should elevate this kind of characteristic. It's hostile states and wishing to unleash an all-out war. Initially conventional, but inevitably it will be very quickly transformed into a nuclear exchange war. Nuclear missiles, nuclear bombs, etc., etc.
You know, Vladimir, I want to add a couple of things to what we've been talking about. The statements coming from the United States and from the European Parliament continue to threaten Russia with, if Russia attacks, if they attack, they are saying that they are going to inflict sanctions from hell, sanctions like Russia has never seen before. That's coming from the United States Congress. It's coming from Blinken and Wendy Sherman, and it's coming from the European Parliament. That's just another very aggressive, threatening statement to Russia.
Yes, right.
In addition to that, Joseph Biden, and you mentioned how his talk becomes more military,
louder,
it's intensified.
Louder.
He was quoted, and he said this, I guess at not a press conference, but somebody asked him the question. He's thinking about sending 8,500 more US troops to Eastern Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, where in Eastern Europe would they go? They would go to Poland, they would go to Turkey, and probably, why not go to Ukraine? Because the United States, Canada, and the UK already have several hundred, maybe thousands of combat-ready personnel in Ukraine. And this is what people don't understand, and you've been so articulate in explaining just what the situation is and has been in Ukraine leading up to what everybody fears, or a lot of people fear, is an all-out war. I'd like to mention one thing in this context, Vladimir. In the last couple of days, I've been getting emails from different peace groups in America who are urging their members and organizing protests in various cities and at the US Capitol. I'm talking protests, mobilizing people with signs, protesting this run-up to war against Russia. And it was the same kind of thing. It woke up a lot of peace people when the United States was going to attack and invade Iraq and then Syria. I was part of those back in the day because I was living in the States. Now, you've answered some very important questions and added a lot more information that I hadn't been aware of. I guess what I'd like to ask you is, because you're pretty convinced that war is going to happen, that the Russian people, for the most part, are calm, but people like yourself who are in the know, who are part of the military, part of the government, know that Russia doesn't really need to fear because of a superior military. A lot of people that I know in America and military people They, excuse me, they do not believe that Russia is superior militarily, technologically in any way. I can't believe that the Pentagon doesn't know that. So let me ask you this, Vladimir. Who is it or what is it that is behind all of this aggression against Russia? And it dates back to, well, even before World War II, but certainly since World War II and when President Harry Truman took over, the attacks on Russia have just increased. Cold War I, now we're in what? Maybe Hot War I. Your thoughts on that?
Yes, too many angles, too many directions you have identified in your question.
Okay, so Vladimir, I'll make the question simple. Who or what is behind this American aggression towards Russia?
Yes, military industrial complex of the United States. The current and former US presidents, starting from Mr. Clinton, then Bush, Obama, then Donald Trump, and finally Joseph Biden. The idea is simply to dismember the Russian Federation into small counties. The reason is to destroy economy of Russia, to destroy military might of the Russian Federation, to extract national reserves of the Russian Federation, not for dollars, but for dimes, for cents, for nothing, for peanuts, continuously. The reason is that behind this is to create a belt of unfriendly, hostile nations surrounding Russia. I have seen NATO propaganda leaflet on its NATO website. They used such argument that there are 14 different nations, states, surrounding Russia as neighbors. And the NATO information unit claimed that there are only 5 nations bordering Russia. They named nations that have land border with us, territorial, on land. But they have forgotten that there are countries that are members of NATO alliance across seas, across Baltic Sea. For example, Germany. It's our immediate NATO ally. If we look at the map of the Baltic Sea area, and Romania and Bulgaria in the Black Sea area, Turkey as well. So, in all, half of NATO, the list of members are members, and it's not very important in this particular world. I mean, to specify what kind of borders NATO countries are having with Russia, either on land or just across seas and oceans. NATO is just a cluster. It's a military pact, unified, and is having Article 5 of the Washington Treaty of 1949, one for all or all for one. So there are too many schemes and too many plans behind this kind of dangerous situation. So that's why Washington and NATO would like to create a proxy war. Previously, it was a crawling aggression of Kiev versus Donbass, but currently it's a kind of full-fledged military preparations with the aim to start demolishing Donbass. If this play is successful, to go to the Crimean Peninsula to create the same kind of aggression against the Republic of Crimea. So after that, who knows? Probably to intimidate Russian from many other directions, from the Baltic states, because still there are a lot of dual-capable aircraft, F-16 with different designations. I mean, letters E like Echo, C like Charlie, D like Delta, etc. Plus French Mirages 2000, plus Tornado. They can deliver tactical nuclear weapons. So the situation, it doesn't remind the Cold War #1. It is actually Cold War #2. It is Cuban Missile Crisis #3. Why 3, but not 2? Because the first, I mean, the Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962. The second is after creation of this NATO Air Force Operation Baltic Air Policing with the tactical nuclear weapons that may be used by specific aircraft, military aircraft. By the way, B-6112, a newly built, newly invented air-dropped bomb with the guidance systems. It doesn't use parachutes like previous family of B-61. It will be delivered to Europe in the upcoming May. So we have to wait February, March, April. In May, it will appear. Its delivery systems, F-35A, is already in the armed forces, in the air forces of many NATO member states, Denmark, Norway, Poland, and even neutral Finland decided to buy 64, I repeat, 64 F-35 Alpha, distinctly delivery system of nuclear dropped bombs. What for? Who is initiator? Russia? No. Belarus? No. The Organization on Security and on Security Cooperation Treaty Organization? No. America? Military industrial complex? Militaristic leaders like President Joseph Biden. He has been a killer and he will be the killer if he does not stop. So I have received yesterday 2 appeals of the European anti-NATO movements, anti-nuclear movements, peaceful movements, with also open letter urging, namely the United States and all NATO member countries, not to incite Kiev for aggression, not to sell or deliver any kind of lethal weaponry free of charge. It doesn't matter whether it's priced or without price or free of charge. They are asking, they are demanding, and also received just a kind of appeal aimed to the United States government from some American peace movement organizations. I am ready to subscribe to them both as a Russian citizen. Yesterday, I was addressing channel 1 in Russia. It's number one in the Russian Federation, Channel 1. They have a program 60 minutes, like 1 hour program. And I was invited. And I urged both houses of the Russian parliament, the Federation Council, upper, like US Senate, and State Duma, like House of Representatives, that's equivalent like in the United States, State Duma, lower house, to adopt a special statement, a special appeal, special open letter to all NATO countries. Do not incite aggressor. Do not sell arms. Do not supply this aggressor, Ukraine, with arms. Stop creating the third nuclear war, third global war, third world war. We have one and second last century. I don't know whether the Russian parliament, the two houses of Russian parliament, will support my idea, but I think that we should use any methods. Try in a search to awaken people who are obsessed with frantic ideas, to start wars, to create hostilities, to use military might, to suppress other people. These people are sitting not in the Russian Federation. We have completely different tasks. We have completely different goals. And by the way, our two drafts, draft treaty sent to the United States on December 15th last year, and a little bit different draft agreement sent to NATO the same date, December 15th. It was like a last chance to divert this gloomy scenario. Unfortunately, neither Washington, neither NATO accepted them very seriously and in a very constructive way. So the situation in the world will be very risky, dangerous, and if a war against Donbass suddenly erupts today or tomorrow, I don't know when, nobody knows, probably Mr. Joseph Biden and Mr. Volodymyr Zelensky know that for sure. The economic situation, trade relationship, financial transactions all over the world, but first and foremost in Europe, will be severely damaged. And inevitably, even if the European Union or if Germany certify Nord Stream gas pipeline going to Germany initially from Greifswald, we will not be able to supply gas to Europe, even if they certify the project and pay huge prices. So people are thinking about this, or they are still sleepy, or believe that cold and M16 or nuclear bombs can resolve our issues. No, never. It's a cul-de-sac. It's a deadlocked stance, very dangerous. So I would like to apply to the US Congress instead of two Russian chambers of parliament. Dear senators and House representatives of the US Congress, block, please, delivery of any kind of arms to Ukraine. Recall all advisors, recall all units, of the US GIs that are in Ukraine. Do not sell troops to Ukraine. You will lose. And we will lose. Nobody will win. Think it over. We have a saying in Russian. Before you do something, think not twice, but think 16 times. 16 раз. And then cut your fiber, your cloth, your paper. Regis?
Vladimir, I want to thank you so much for your insights. Always extremely valuable, always factual. And you mentioned at the very end just now that you hope that people are waking up in the Russian Federation, in the United States Congress. As I mentioned earlier in the show, I have seen emails, several just this morning, of various peace groups, different groups, not working together, unfortunately, but organizing rallies and protests around the country. So people are waking up. I'd like to end on this topic, and it goes back to Russia's, I think, demands, and I think you've agreed with me, for security agreements written in writing, legally binding. It goes back further than this, but I think this is a key moment. It was in 1989 when Reagan told Gorbachev, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. And the Berlin Wall came down, and Germany was reunited. Russia did not like that at the time, but the Americans came back and said, and it is now proven, there was no formal agreement, but it is in all kinds of memos and documentation from US and UK representatives that the United States promised that if the Berlin Wall came down, and Russia had to agree with that because they were in control of East Berlin, that NATO would not move 1 inch east towards Russia. President Clinton came in and immediately violated that. And ever since then, this broken promise, the proof is in the writings and the documentation that has recently been serviced, have violated that promise to Russia. And in my mind, that is a hallmark moment and event that has increasingly threatened Russia in our lifetimes, most of our lifetimes. So I want to thank you for, again, coming on the show at short notice and sharing your really incredible and important observations. And I hope that it will do a little bit to help turn this craziness around and avert what is the unthinkable.
Yes, thank you very much, Regis, for your questions and for your dedication that all our troubles and all our difficulties and all our frustrations are to be limited peacefully and without any kind of war, be it conventional or nuclear. God forbid.